Hey guys, this is Austin Martin. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to make maps in QGIS. So there's going to be three videos that we're going to do. The first one's just going to be basic information about, just GIS in general. I'm going to go through a couple of the different tools that we're going to use, and then lastly, we're going to make a background, which the background is what we're going to use to make the subsequent maps in the other two videos, which are going to be a dot map and a heat map. The map that we're going to make today is going to be, the maps, I should say, are going to be crime in Chicago. They're going to be, the heat map is going to show crime, number of crimes per zip code, and the dot map is going to show the, it's going to shade the dots, which is going to be the locations of the crimes, by whether or not they were domestic crimes or they were not domestic crimes. So before we get started, the biggest thing that we need to look at whenever we do GIS mapping in the beginning, before you start anything, is going to be your coordinate reference system. So here we see it says current CRS WGS 84. If you click on this, it'll show you there's a bunch of different coordinate reference systems that you can use, but the one that we're going to use for all of our projects are going to be WGS 84. You'll also see the authority ID, which is EPSG 4326, right? So that's what you'll see at the bottom. So that's what we're going to primarily use. All these other ones, there are a bunch of uses for these, but for our purposes, we don't really need to worry about them. So anytime we pull a shapefile in, we're going to want to save it to this CRS if it's not already in this WGS 84. And the reason that we want to do that is if you think about just not even digital maps, but just regular like paper maps, right? Imagine you have a map of the US that's 2 feet by 3 feet, and then you have a printed out one that's by 8.5 by 11. As long as these maps are geographically accurate, if you resize either of them, you should be able to put them on top of each other to where they exactly overlap, right? But because they come in all shapes and sizes, we need some sort of scalar or projection to take everything and put it to where it's the same size and overlaps the right way. So that's why it's so important to make sure that our CRS is accurate. OTF on the fly is a setting that will be enabled that I like to have. It's kind of a fail-safe where if you forget to change the projection, it's not the end of the world. Usually on the fly does a pretty good job of lining them up on their own. But I mean, we don't want to rely on that, right? We want to make sure that we're accurate and that we're going about this in the most accurate way possible. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go here, and I've gone to, you can find your find your various different folders, and if you right click on them, you can hit add as favorite. This up here is probably and you can add them as a favorite, and that's a really good way to find your files whenever you need them. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take this shape file and we're going to pull the US states one down. The other thing we do have in here, which is in my template file, which you'll see in the folder wherever you saw this video at. This is an OSM street map, and this is just kind of like a background for the background, which is going to have, it has a lot of details and information like some lines and stuff, but it's going to come out faded in our when we export this, and it just looks really nice, so I like to keep it. For the purposes of creating the map, though, you can see how it takes a little bit to load in because this is pretty, graphic intensive. We're going to leave this disabled while we make the maps. So the first thing we're going to need to do is take this shapefile of the United States, and we're going to go ahead and cut this individual, the outline of the state of Illinois out of there because we don't need the rest of it. So what we want to do is we want to select the layer. Well, first we need to check to make sure that what the CRS is on this, right? The CRS is the correct CRS. All my shapefiles are going to be, but maybe with the exception of one, are all going to already be on this coordinate reference system, but it's always good to check, right? So we're good, we don't have to worry about it. We're gonna basically pull this Illinois state out of the entire file. So we're gonna click on this tool, which is the select tool. And you can just, you can click on stuff, it'll show up yellow. You can hold down shift and select multiple. This is the deselect button. So I mean, you can hold down control to like deselect. So what we're gonna do is we're just selecting Illinois, right? Now we're gonna right click on the layer and do save as. And then we want to make sure it's going to be saved as a shapefile. You can save, these files will come, every single shapefile also has a data table in there, right? They'll all have data tables, and we can save them as CSVs if you want to. But we're going to right click and we're going to go save as and save this as an ESRI shapefile. And we're going to click Save Only Select Features and make sure this is correct. And then we're going to browse. And then the place that we're going to browse to for this is going to be, we're going to go to our desktop where we have our GIS project. We're going to go to Project Shapefiles, which is a new folder where we are going to keep our whole project and every shapefile that we use for the project. It's really important to make sure that you save every file that you use for your project within an enclosing folder, because if you want to send the project to somebody, basically QGIS doesn't save all the data inside its own file. It references all of the shape files that you have in an enclosing folder. So we want to make sure we save everything in one folder so that when we send somebody this folder and they open our project, that it'll load up all the shape files that we've saved into it. So we're going to call this Illinois outline. Cool. So hit OK, and we've got a new layer. And then we're not going to need these US states anymore, so we can just remove that layer. So what we're going to do now is we want to make sure that we have some zip codes to make a nice background so we could have some sort of spatial context when we put our data points on. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to take some just a big shapefile of zip codes and try to just get the zip codes in here. So we're going to add in this zips national file, which is going to be the file that we use for, it's the same thing as our previous file, but it's going to be it's going to include the zip codes. And oops, didn't mean to do that. We're going to go ahead and come up here and go to Vector, Geoprocessing Tools, and then Clip. And then what we're basically going to do is we're going to take these zip codes into the input layer. This is what you essentially want to clip. And then the clip layer is going to be the boundaries. So we only want the zip codes that are inside of the Illinois outline. And it's going to run a clipping algorithm that's going to give us that. Cool. So now we have the zip code layer. Also, it's always important to check and make sure what our CRS is. Our CRS is good, so we're fine. And so now we have this layer. We can remove this, and we now have our zip codes. So this is really nice. A lot of these holes in here, this is going to be like where water is. You can get shapefiles for water and things like that if you want them. But there's a trick that we're going to do here that's kind of going to do that for us. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to right click on it. Oops. We're going to right click and go to Save As. And we're going to do the same thing that we did for the Illinois outline. We don't need to click Save Only Selected Features because we're just saving the whole shapefile. So we're going to browse. We're in our Project Shapefiles folder. We're going to do Illinois zips. Cool. Hit OK. And then our new file is here. We don't care about this clip file. These clip files, whenever you do something and you clip it, if you don't save them and you close out your software or it crashes, you're not going to have these clip files. So you want to make sure that you actually save them once you're done clipping them if you want to keep them. If you don't like it, you can just didn't like how it clipped, you can take it out. But so now we got the zip codes and we have the outline for our map. And this is kind of going to be a backdrop, but what we're going to do with this, it's a really cool trick, is we're actually going to duplicate this layer. And we're going to take this copy layer and we're going to rename it just to be organized, and we're going to call it water. And it's going to basically fill in these little lakes and rivers and things that we have. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go to Properties here. And we're going to go to Style, which is something we haven't seen yet. And what Style does is this is where you like change all of your colors, and this is where we're going to do all of our shading and all of our fancy stuff when we make our new maps. But what we want to do is we're going to take this color for fill, and we're going to go make our own watercolor. So let's find I like this color. This is kind of a nice color for water. Maybe like mellow it out a little bit. Yeah, that's a good watercolor. So we'll just do that. This is going to be our water background. And then when we click on Simple Fill here and go down to our line, and you can see what the color of the outline is, what the line thickness is. We're just going to remove the line, the no pen, just to make it easier. We're just not going to have an outline on this. It doesn't really matter to us. We're going to do something else for that. And so we'll just go up here and everything's good. We're going to hit OK. And then we'll enable this layer. And oops, let's disable that. So now we can see what our water is going to look like in the back, right? Yeah, maybe that's a little bit darker than I wanted actually. Maybe we'll just pull a little bit more like, yeah, I like that better. Okay, cool. So we've got that. Sure, we'll save our project real quick. And then for this Illinois outline, what we're going to do here is we're going to go to Style again, Properties, and then we're going to go to Style. And then we're going to go ahead and just take this color here, and instead of changing the color, we're going to take the opacity down to 0. And the reason we're going to take the opacity down to 0 is just because we just want an outline. You can convert this shapefile to like just lines instead of polygons, but I just think it's easier to duplicate it to make the water and then just have it. You can always re-enable the fill if you want to. And then for the outline, we're going to go ahead and I don't really like this. I'm going to change the color here. And click on this and go to your. You can set kind of swatches like little standards. I have one here. It's a little bit less intense black. It's like a 85% black. It's not so heavy. So we're going to do that. The line width, we can keep that the same. So we're going to hit OK, and that's going to be on top. And we're going to have a thicker outline there on the top. And then the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to take these Illinois zips, this part right here, the orange layer, and we're going to do properties, and we're going to go do this, change the style on this guy as well. The color we're going to use is we're going to go with white as a background for now. And then for the lines, outline color, normally I like to go for a nice gray. So we use this gray here. And then for the outline width, I usually like to put it to 0.16 as opposed to 0.26 for the outline. We hit OK, and look at that. Doesn't that look way better? So we got this nice thick black outline around the outside. We got the water that's breaking up our white map, and then our gray lines aren't too thick, but they're kind of thick enough to where we can see them, and they're just kind of a nice little background there. Great. So the next thing that we want to do is add our label in. We're going to add in a label because we're mostly just doing Chicago. We're not going to even use the majority of this. We're probably just going to use like this area of the map. So we need to add in a label. It's going to say Chicago. And then we're probably going to add in some parcels just because there's going to be a lot of dots and we're going to want to zoom in. So let's first go ahead and we're going to add in some the label. So the way to do that, we're going to go up to the top bar and go to Layer, and then Add Layer, and then Delimited Text Layer, because we're going to have this as a CSV. And so we're going to browse really quick. We're going to go to our desktop and find our project. It's going to be in my data folder. And this is just called Chicago Lat Long. And so what this folder is, and how I usually do cities, is I will just Google like map of Illinois or map of Chicago area, and just do a Google image search and look at the pictures to see what the cities are that they kind of highlight in those maps. And then I'll kind of just jot them down and then Google Chicago Lat Long and basically copy and paste that into Excel. I usually only do like 5 or 6 cities, so it's usually faster, honestly, to just Google it for each one and then throw it in the sheet. Whenever you're adding this in, you can always check CSV, and then we'll do like latitude, longitude. The X field is always going to be longitude, and then the Y field is always going to be latitude. So we're just going to hit OK, and add this in. It's going to ask us what CRS we want it to be, which is going to be our WGS 84, and then the UPSG 4326, and hit OK. And there's a little dot with Chicago. So this is going to be the same way that when we add in our crime data points in our next video, we're going to do the same thing. It's just going to be a whole lot more dots. And the way to go about making this a label, the first thing we want to do is go to Properties. We're going to Style, and kind of a combination of what we did with the other 2 layers is we're going to take the opacity down to 0, so there's no fill. And then we're going to take the outline, or not the color of the outline. We're going to go down here and then do outline width to, where is it? Oh, outline style, excuse me, to no pen. Hit OK. So that's going to look invisible. Like we're not going to see this dot anymore. That's okay because we don't want it to be a dot. We just want the label to be in a geographically accurate place. So now we click up here. This is the little Labels tab. And in the Labels tab, you're going to basically select a layer. like which one do you want to do labels for. And we're going to do Chicago lat long, and we're going to click Show Labels for this layer. After we do that, we're going to want to click Label with City, because that's where our name field is. We're going to see it says Chicago there. So now we're going to do all the styling for our layer and see how we want to make it look. So I'm going to go up to Arial and do Arial. We're not going to do italic. We'll put it like bold. Maybe because it's like a city and we want to do like, it's going to be a big label. Maybe we'll just go to like typecase and just do all uppercase. And I usually keep it, fully transparent, not zero transparency. But we'll go over to this buffer, this text buffer. And this is really good if you have lots and lots of dots, because it makes it so that you can see your city name. So we'll do that white text buffer. It's kind of hard to see because our background's white. We will like disable it. Yeah, you can see the white background around it, right? That's kind of what it has. If there's a lot of dots, that helps to kind of buffer it. We're going to put that transparency at we'll put it at like 35 for now. Usually do roughly 30 transparency. It depends on how many dots there are and how much it stands out. We'll do some drop shadow maybe. We'll add some drop shadow in here. Change our color to, where is it? It's under black. To this guy, that's the not as intense black. We should also probably do that for our label, right? If we're going to use a consistent amount of black. And then, yeah, okay, apply. And then we are going to go over here and come to this area, which is where you basically figure out where you want your placement to be. So right now, cartographically, it's like right on the point. Like this is the ideal placement based on visual relationship with the point. I like to do offset from the point, just because because Chicago's like all over here, right? So we're not super concerned about where it's at. We just want to put it in a place where it's not blocking very much stuff. So we're going to go to offset from point, and I like to do top left-hand corner. And to get kind of an idea of how far it is from the point, you can do this you can do this part before you make the dot invisible, and you can kind of see the distance between them a little bit better. But I know where it's at, and we're not really concerned about that with how big this area is. So we're just going to go change this map unit to millimeter, and I like to offset it by 1.5. So it's going to be good there. What if we can just go to properties, and we'll just color this really quick. Yeah, so it's not that far away. We're fine. It's really, it's pretty negligible. It's just so that you're not sitting on top of the point, and also you're a little bit off the top of, some of those different, some of the data points that you're going to be on top of. Cool. So now that we have our label, and the last thing that we're going to do is we're just going to add in some parcels. And these parcels that we're going to have are just going to be like street lines for this. It's going to be all the street lines for Chicago. It's going to be so dense that we're probably going to have to do something in our dot map that's going to be a little zoomed in subsection. And it's always nice to, instead of using zip codes for those areas, to use streets. So we're going to go to shape files here, go to parcels, and I have the Chicago streets file. So this is just going to be a shapefile of all the streets in Chicago. The original file was actually this, and I got this from a website called Metro Extracts, which will pull, it's free, it'll pull out, basically you put any city in and it'll let you download them, or you can drag on a map. It's kind of like a Google Maps, and it'll basically just make you it takes about an hour, but it'll make a shapefile for you of all of the streets and everything. So if you look, like I have this pretty big, this is the original file, it went outside, so I clipped it, and that's clipped the same way that we made the zip codes. So these are really nice if you're doing big cities. They're really fun, I like them a lot. So we can remove this layer because we have the clipped version, right? And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to properties, and we're gonna go ahead and change this color to gray. But I think we're going to go with a little bit darker gray, actually, just because we have a tendency to make these, I like to make these guys a little bit smaller, so the line's smaller, so thinner I should say. So it helps it stand out more. So we're going to go from 0.26 to like 0.04. We'll see how that looks. Yeah, so that's not too bad. We could probably go up a little bit, maybe 0.06. Yeah, that's a lot better. So yeah, especially if we zoom in like this, you zoom in a little bit more, you're gonna be able to see it. So um, we could even probably just do a little bit darker on the gray, um, just to try to like there. Perfect. That's a lot better. Awesome. So now we have our parcels, we have our water. We can disable these parcels if we want to and just show our zip codes. This is all for the state of Illinois. And then if we zoom in like this and kind of see what it all looks like, maybe we'll disable these little zip codes really quick. And the water. And just kind of, we'll show it all. Awesome. So this is kind of going to be the base of our map. This is what we're going to put our dots on. Whenever we do our actual like zip code shading, we're going to go ahead and shade all these zip codes in. So it's pretty cool. We're basically at the end of the first video where we go over doing all of this different stuff. The next video that I show you is going to be either the dot video or it's going to be the heat map video. One last thing that we can do that's probably the best thing is to take all this stuff and in the Chicago, the label is going to be above anything anyways, but you can click on these guys and just kind of right click and group selected, and we're just going to rename this as background. Maybe I'll pull the Chicago lat lawn out of there and just do that, and then oops, right click, and we're going to rename this as like Chicago label. So that just makes it a lot more organized. You can enable and disable everything at the same time, but it's just a good way to organize it and deal with that kind of thing. So that's all for this video. The next ones are going to be the heat map and the dot map. Thanks.